Other people who have worked in other industries may have very different experiences and views about all these things. But what I've typically seen is that differentiation that's based on minor innovation. Okay, I'm talking about minor innovation. I'm not talking about the creative destruction type of game-changing innovation. That's a different ballgame. But minor innovation or minor features and functions, this will give you a temporary high. Okay, this will give you a small spike in your revenue. And after that, other people will copy whatever you're doing. And no matter how many lawyers you have, you really cannot defend yourself in the IP court of law. Okay. So sustainable advantage, where does it come from? And what are the causes of it? And so this is what I call my Toyota test. Okay. So what are the attributes of your product that the customer sees? And here is a list that I personally have experienced or seen as important. How well does it support the functionality that they themselves want? How robust reliability is? I'm working on PowerPoint to make this presentation. The PowerPoint might have 100 great features, but I only use 27. I don't know about the rest 73. I only care about those 27. And does the PowerPoint software crash every 5 minutes as I'm doing this? Or can I write the whole thing without ever getting into any trouble? Okay. And any software is not without problems. Software always has bugs. So how quickly you support your customers? Customers understand that software is going to have problems. But how good and how responsive are you in supporting them? That's something they definitely see. In some cases, products are user interfaces. So how well are the user interfaces defined? How easy it is to use the product? It's no good to design a well thought out complex product if it's very complex to use and it's not easy to use. That's not a situation people, I have personally seen products fail because of this. Products that were actually very good products, if you look at the core of the product, that failed because the UI was not very good. And then a sense of whether the product is justified. Now, if you sell your product for $10,000, the customer may not be able to say that this product ought to cost $9,777 and 28 cents. But the customer has a sense whether the product is overpriced or it's a good value for his money. So you have to fall in that ballpark. And in my view, if you apply, calling this the Toyota test, if you're talking about long-term sustainable competitive advantage, okay, this doesn't apply to a product company started by an entrepreneur who, say, in 2 years' time wants to exit the business. Okay, that's not the situation I'm talking about. And in that situation, the criteria can be different. Okay, I would like to acknowledge that. Okay, I'm talking about somebody's in that business to stay there. Okay, if you are Infosys and if you want to launch Finacle, chances are you want to keep that product and you want to grow that product. And how that product performs is something that's going to add or subtract from your brand as a company. I'm talking about those types of cases here. And so what I've seen is that good architecture and good engineering, a well-designed, well-developed product seems to be what gives you all these attributes and seems to be what gives you the long-term sustainable competitive advantage. When you're developing a product, you have to resist the temptation of adding a feature just so that you can go to your customer and say, I have this feature and my competitor doesn't have it. This is the point of the quote from Andy Grove at the bottom. That feature has to hatch. It has to actually help the customer. Okay. If the feature doesn't actually help the customer, there is no point in adding it just so that you can claim an advantage over your competition. One quick line about MNC captive centers. So as we were having a very interesting discussion on this topic, as we were having coffee before starting the session, and if you go back 20 years, everybody was launching software companies or setting up MNCs and captive centers in India. And we were all basically in the blue box. We were struggling to do basic software engineering, basic QA, basic support. We mastered it very quickly. Second topic, which is product companies launching services. So there are many different scenarios that are possible. And if you look at the top part, so you have a product company, the blue box on the left side is the product company. And of course, you started selling a product to your product company customers. So that's the first top line, which is selling products. What are the other things you can do? You can sell professional services. And then the software as a service or a product as a service, that's a third thing. That is of course, the order of the day. This business model and this path of evolution I have seen as typical of less well-established product companies. This is what they do when you already have a well-established product business. This is what you typically see people do. The next box is, this is a possibility. I have put it there more to make sure I haven't left it out. But this situation where a product company is actually offering services to people in the domain, mostly in the domain, either you have customers or competitors. You can have collaborators, but collaborators typically are they're either aligned with you or with your competitors. So that being the case, the divisions, the battle lines are very clear. And so offering your services to people who are either enemies or enemy camp or in the enemy camp, that is not a very realistic proposition. And then the last one, which is doing business within and outside the domain. So I see this very typically with product startups that are struggling. This happens all the time. Somebody has a great product idea, a lot of passion about it, goes and launches a product company. And for one reason or the other, something doesn't quite work out and they're struggling. Okay, sometimes it's just a matter of things taking longer than you anticipated. And then under those types of circumstances, what I've seen people do is to start a little services unit on the side, which will keep their cash flow going. Okay? And this is nothing to frown at. I think this is a great thing, and I think we should keep this in mind, that this is an option a typical Silicon Valley company doesn't have. A product company in Silicon Valley lives or dies by its product. Product doesn't succeed, the company goes out of business. But in India, we have the luxury of operating like this because that services model is very well established. Okay, I'm not saying it's easy. It's like running two businesses at the same time, a services business and a product business. And your energies are divided, your loyalties are divided, all of that is going to happen. But if you can handle all that well, if you can manage all that well, this is a very realistic option in India. Is that if your product business isn't quite doing what you thought it would do, think about doing some services, things that will keep you going temporarily, and then as the product business catches up, you can think of which way to go. Okay, so product companies going into services and what are the challenges they face. So product companies moving into services is mainly something the B2B infrastructure companies do. If you're Apple and you're making iPhones, I'm not sure what kind of services you can provide to your customers. Number one, your customers are too numerous. Okay. So B2C scenario, this doesn't quite work. So this is mainly a possibility for B2B infrastructure companies. Number one, you have to be careful how you deal with your SIs, because your SIs might see you as somebody who's going to compete with them for the revenue. And in product companies, you will meet a lot of very bright people who were very good at taking responsibility for their code. Okay? Their devotion is to this is my product, this is my subsystem, this is my code. But in services, you have to be a lot more customer oriented. You're working with a customer. Whatever product you may be working with, you're still working with a customer. And at that moment, satisfying that customer is a very high priority. And you have to try your utmost to keep that customer happy. Okay, and that's a slight cultural shift there. Actually not a slight, it can be a fairly major cultural shift. And then one issue we have to, along the same lines, resources that a person who did very well in a product company may not do as well in a services company. Okay, as you go into professional services and things like that, being able to deal with a customer, having the social polish, having perception management skills, all these things are very important. So, horses for horses, right? And then in India, typically the two friends that never leave you are recruitment and retention. These challenges you always face. And if you're a product company now, we all know about Instagram, right? 13 people building a $1 billion company. Now, at 13 people, the recruitment and retention challenges are very few. It's a very close-knit group. At 13, everyone is a founder or a semi-founder, if you can call it that. And so you really don't face these types of issues. But if you if you go into another line of work where it's labor intensive, then it's a skill you have to acquire, how to recruit large numbers of people, how to retain them, how to train them, all these types of things. And then consultative selling is a very important point that comes into play. Product people who do traditional product sales, they are very good at going saying, my product does A and B and C and D well, and his product does E and F well, which you don't need. So they have their pitch set up very well. Okay. But in services, it's not quite that clear. In services, you have to take more the attitude of a consultant. I'm a consultant. Let me see what your problem is, and let me see how I can solve it. And it takes a certain amount of work. It takes a certain amount of training before you can get there. And then again, the usual challenge of managing and optimizing the things like bench time and utilization. These are all challenges. This is not rocket science. I mean, this is not, or anything I said on the services side also. If you're a services company going into products, these are just things you have to do and learn over time. It's not like it's horribly difficult to do all these things. Many people have successfully done all these types of things. I'm just trying to point out some of the things you will have to do and learn along the way. And then final slide about the SAS model. So as I was building this presentation, I realized that a lot of my material on the SAS model is very much the basic kind of stuff, which is probably more appropriate for a more junior crowd. So I didn't put that in, and I left this discussion at a very high level. But SAS model, as we were discussing earlier, again over coffee. So when I was with IBM, the chairman of IBM was Lou Gerstner, and Lou Gerstner, he's a Harvard MBA who came from, I think he was first with McKinsey, then he went to work for American Express, and then he went to work for RJR. When there was a takeover of RJR, he became the CEO of RJR. And of course, a very long, successful and distinguished career. And then he came to IBM. And when they were talking about what are the different businesses you could build to take IBM further, one of the ideas that was out there was services. And maybe an insider would not have seen this idea for what it was. But Lou Gerstner, being an outsider, had felt the pain of having to deal with having a large server farm in a company whose core competency is completely different. Okay. So when people said, look, we will sell our hardware and software and also manage it further, which meant IBM people are at customer side managing IBM's hardware and software. You pay for those people, but still you are not worried about having to recruit and retain and train somebody on IBM hardware. You recognize that as a great idea, and rest is history, as they say, right? Now IBM's 40% or some astronomical fraction of their revenue comes from services. It's a great success story. If you follow that line further, I'm in the business of making food ingredients, or I'm in the business of making pharmaceuticals, or whatever it is that I do. Why should I have to worry about software at all? And that's where I think the success of the SAS model is bound to happen, is that eventually I don't think there is any other way to do business than this. We may not have seen this 30 years ago, okay? But I think it's becoming increasingly clear that if I'm in the automotive business or pharmaceuticals or whatever, and I shouldn't have to worry about, the nitty-gritties of buying hardware and buying software. Somebody has software out there somewhere that works for me. All I have to do is use it. And I think in that model, at that level, is going to be very popular. I think it's a matter of time, and as I personally feel that changes like this take a long time to really percolate through. Okay, there are signs of great success, but these are things that don't happen in 2 years. These are things that happen in 10 years. But I think we will see eventually everybody that can move to a SaaS model or a cloud computing based model. So a few points about what is good about this model, and I'm not sure how much detail I need to go into here. I think most of you know this well. But if you have a product that you have built and then you have sold 560 copies to 560 customers, every time you send out an upgrade, you have to send it to those 560. Whereas in SaaS model, at least in theory, the idea is I have one working platform which services those 560 customers, which means everything is on my own site, and I'm managing all of them with multi-tenancy, and therefore it's much easier for me to make upgrades at whatever time I want, manage them howsoever way I want, etc., etc.